to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
The BJ Show for Thursday. I'll get my day straight, John. Thursday, May 15th, 2025. This is the A block, which means we start the show just after the top of the hour. John, can I ask you a weird question?
Please do.
Is the phrase top of the hour a dated phrase by old guys like me because of the fact that nobody has a physical representation of a clock anymore? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. And I know a wonderful human being that texted me over the weekend and said that one of their children was not familiar with the idea quarter past, quarter of the hour, top of the hour, things like that. Because for the exact point that you mentioned, Brad, nobody looks at the clock anymore.
Interesting. One of the things, and I mentioned this before, when I first got into the radio business, probably about 2 or 3 years, one of the big controversies was, how do we give the time on the radio? Because this is when digital clocks were first starting to make their presence. And the idea being was, the old way, you said, right now if I looked at the clock, I'd say, hey, it's 3 minutes after 7 o'clock, which is the current time. But now you just say 7:03. So what we did was we gave it both ways. We say, hey, it's 3 minutes after 7 o'clock. That's 7:03. That kind of thing.
Oh, wow. That's kind of an educational approach, right, Brad?
Right. And the idea being is it transitioned people from the old way of telling time, a physical clock face. And it's interesting. I never thought about the aspect with quarter hour, like what you talked about, because of the fact that you divide the clock into 4 quarters. And you notice I didn't say quarters, I said quarters.
You say it correctly, Brad.
I say it correctly. Now, I'm drinking my glass of milk because that's
You and I both drink milk.
Right, John and I are milk guys. Not milk, but milk guys. Okay, that is John Combest. Every single day he puts together a important list of all the things you should know about going on in the state of Missouri. He's got this incredible website, johncombest.com, COMBEST.com, johncombest.com. And what we do is we start at the show with the top 3. Now, John, I'm going to guess that one of your top 3 is going to be, I don't know if you were here listening off air just a minute ago.
I did. I heard it from the Fox News covering this, one of the top 3 stories today.
Yes, the Fox News national story is about Missouri, at least one of the stories. And I'm just really curious if that may be one of the top 3. But we'll just bring in this guy. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what do you do?
Now on with the countdown.
And we start with?
In third place.
Well, Brad, follow-up stories are the theme of all 3 of the top 3 stories today. We'll follow up with a piece that we talked about 2 weeks ago involving Senator Josh Hawley. You know, Josh Hawley started a famous acronym bill, I guess you could say. Sorry, I was looking up for the name of it here. A bill that would ban insider trading. I shouldn't say insider trading. That would ban stock trading by members of Congress. And he named it the PELOSI Act, after Nancy Pelosi, who happens to be a marvelous and successful investor. You'd say, John, people have talked about this for a long time. This is probably never going to happen, right? Well, according to Brad's favorite news outlet, National Public Radio, NPR sat down with Speaker Mike Johnson. And Mike Johnson said he is, quote, open to the conversation. And in fact, about 40 members of the U.S. House, both Democrats and Republicans, have signed on to an anti-trading bill that's largely constituted. You could largely describe it as pretty much Josh Hawley's bill. Maybe not word for word, but at least in principle. Even Kansas City Democrat Emanuel Cleaver wants to sign up. You know, he's a very progressive Democrat. Now, a cynic like me, Brad, would point out that Emanuel Cleaver, who's filed for bankruptcy and runs several failed businesses, according to disclosure, does not have a metal canister to relieve himself in. So maybe it's a little bit easier for a guy that's broke at his age to criticize people who've actually accumulated assets and want to make a little bit of money. But that's just a cynical view coming from me, Brad. So Josh Hawley's PELOSI Act has a good chance of passing both the House and maybe the Senate.
Now, PELOSI stands for, do you have that right there in front of you?
I do not have it in front of me, no.
Essentially, it's one of the great acronyms where PELOSI has a meaning to it and has to do with it. I see. What's surprising to me is, how is this not a law already? Get what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I do get it. I think there's just so, and by the way, thanks for giving me a couple seconds to pull that up because I did. And it's preventing elected leaders from owning securities and investments. What a brilliant acronym. And I think it's just got opposition because, Brad, I know that stuff like this is really feel good. But if you're a member of Congress and you're a Democrat or Republican and you're in meetings where they're talking about how the presidential administration or Congress will be spending a ton more money on solar projects, I don't know why you can't go home and log into your Schwab account and start buying stock in a bunch of solar companies based on what is public information. Like everybody knows that. You get what I'm saying? It would be different if you had inside information that one particular solar panel company was going to be getting a government contract. Trading on that information would be illegal. But seeing where the ball is moving and moving your investments in that direction, to me, I don't know why we would keep members of Congress from doing that.
Can I give you my counterpoint on that?
Yeah, please do.
We push for time. Okay. I hear what you're saying, but I think you'd have to be naive to say that members of governmental agencies are privy to things that are not necessarily in the public eye. And I give an example of that. Scott Fawn, your friend, who has got his ear to the ground in Jefferson City, he probably knows about a lot of stuff that's going on that you and I, as the general public, don't know because it has not surfaced yet in the state legislature. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So yeah, for sure. So what's the follow-up point to that?
Well, the point being, if he knows it, the legislators know it, and it may not be public. It may not have been in a hearing. It may not have been. I mean, for example, I'm not politically well-connected like you. You're extremely politically well-connected. I'm not. I have a few friends in politics.
Go ahead.
Okay, but the point being that they know stuff, and I've had conversations with these various people from time to time. They know stuff that I'm like, wow, how did you know that? Well,
yeah, and so I'll interrupt you and point out that the Securities and Exchange Commission already has mechanisms in place by which if people trade on inside information that's illegal, they'll end up in an orange jumpsuit in jail.
I get that.
So I think that, again, we could split hairs over what exactly, you could be able to trade on. But the idea is, if somebody let's not even talk about Jefferson City. If you work in D.C., you're up on cutting trends. You're up on where government spending is going to go, where regulations are going to go. And can you today use that information to make investment decisions? Yes. I don't know. And I'll give you a quick example. When Billy Long was running for U.S. Senate in 2022, one of his opponents criticized him for owning stock in a Chinese company, Alibaba. Okay, so Alibaba is, this, Brad, is they're a popular Chinese company.
Right.
So the campaign criticized Billy Long for trading Alibaba stock, as if Billy Long would know that some sort of trade deal was coming or something. So I think you can take it to a ridiculous level where members of Congress, in my opinion, should be able to act on information that they have and knowledge that they have and be able to take their resources and allocate them accordingly.
John, I totally disagree with you, and here's where I'd say. If you get elected to a federal government job, vis-a-vis representative or senator, or even on the state level, the state and the federal government should build communal housing, and legislators should be treated like priests in the Catholic religion, where they should have.
Oh, so they should hang out with little boys. Is what you're saying?
You said that, I didn't. In other words, everything should be given to them. So in other words, they have a place to live in which is like a government housing project, like a high-rise government housing project in DC.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
They're given uniforms, so they don't have to worry about going out and buying clothes and things like that. Everybody wears the same uniform. They're given a car allowance. They're given like a per diem. They can buy $100 worth of food on a daily basis. And what they have to do is they have to take the vow of poverty, and they have to take everything that they own and put it in a trust and have John Combest run it. What do you think, John?
Oh, that'd be great. Think of the quality of candidates you would be attracting. They're the type of people that would go to Jeff City and pass the bills in story number 2.
And what's this going to be? We'll find out.
Up a notch to number 2.
Brad, I don't know if you heard at the top of the hour, but Fox News covered a Missouri legislative accomplishment or a Missouri legislative embarrassment, depending on what side of the aisle you're on or what side of the issues you're on. Yes, I think as most people listening to the show know, yesterday the Missouri Senate passed a couple controversial measures. One of them was getting rid of a sick leave requirement that had been passed by voters in November of 2024. And we can maybe go back to that if we have time, and we won't. But we'll also talk about another thing that the legislature passed yesterday, which was the Missouri Senate approved a House bill that would put the abortion issue back on the ballot, most likely on the 2026 ballot. So I think as everybody who listens is aware, but let's go over it anyway. Missouri had really stringent pro-life laws as of 2024. In November of 2024, voters passed with 52% of the vote, Amendment 3, which would significantly loosen abortion laws. And so what the legislature did yesterday, I should say what the Senate did yesterday, was pass a House bill that will go to Governor Kehoe that will give voters, to quote a Republican state senator, Mike Searpoy, give voters another bite at the apple. So this one kind of splits the difference between the old, you could call it stringent pro-life law, and the very loose, liberal, having a baby might give me a headache, therefore this is a health condition, therefore terminate my child. Kind of splits the difference, Brad. And it would reinstate an abortion ban with some exceptions, rape, incest, life of the mother, etc. So, Brad, for folks who haven't heard you talk about this before, can you explain your opposition to this measure?
John, the whole abortion thing, I'm really conflicted by this. I mean, for a number of different reasons. Okay, I'll give my personal anecdote that I got married. I didn't want to have kids. My wife got pregnant, and I wasn't real happy about that. And I have to be honest with you, that's probably one of the most disturbing things in my life that I look back at that now and I think to myself, God, I was totally wrong. I had 4 kids, okay? Don't regret that at all. We have a situation where, like in a lot of countries, a lot of developed countries around the world, we have a negative population growth. But on the flip side of that, I'm the guy that essentially says, you know what? I think the government has its hands in too many things in our personal life, and I don't necessarily agree with the fact that the government tells us we can and can't do various things. Get where I'm going with this? I'm conflicted by the whole thing.
Yeah, I get. So what you're saying is, excuse me, you're saying that your general libertarian philosophy is at odds with what, I'm sorry, Brad, what you would consider a pro-life approach.
Well, I'm the guy that essentially say, you know what? I think the government's got his fingers in too many things. And quite honestly, I do have to agree with some of the Democrats who are saying, hey, look, this went to the voters. The voters approved this bill, which essentially opens up abortions back in the state of Missouri. Why is the government trying to rehash this? It's almost like, we talked about this yesterday, it's almost like the David Hogg thing. He gets elected to be vice chairman of the Democratic Party, and he starts stirring the pot, and the Democrats say, oh, you know what? We made a mistake with the election. We're going to have to do the election over again. Get what I'm saying? It's like, if you don't get your way, you stomp your feet and you pass a law which essentially say, we're going to put this back on the ballot again. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the way I see it, Brad, is that voters approved by 52% one particular abortion measure, which is very lenient. I think everybody would say it's quite lenient.
Exactly.
And it's essentially abortion on demand,
right,
whenever you want it.
Sort of goes back.
Claim that a baby might cause you stress.
Right.
So you could get a mental health exception. And so what senators and representatives are saying is, okay, Missouri voters approve that. Maybe let's give them another option. Let's give them an option that's a little bit more stringent. Maybe voters will pass it. Maybe they won't.
But you know what? The other thing, we'll move on the other way. Amendment A. Okay, that also has that been modified? Is that what the bill that was passed yesterday or put the governor's desk? Is that modify Amendment A?
Yeah, it repeals part of Proposition A, and I'm going through the details here too. So the sick leave portion went into effect this month on May 1st. The new legislation repeals the entire paid sick leave portion, as well as tying minimum wage increases to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So the new legislation says, hey, sick leave gone.
See, there's another thing. I'm conflicted by that because I see both sides of the equation. I've had companies for 40 plus years and I've employed lots of people. Okay. Most of the people I've employed have been good people. They give you a good day's work. You give them their pay. Okay. But I've had some real scoundrels. Oh, and the thing that bothers me about this is I see that Proposition A is like these people going, oh my God, I got guaranteed. I got sick leave. I'm going to call in because I broke a fingernail and I've got time off. Get what I'm saying, John?
Yeah. And they can also, there's nothing in the original provision that can't say that you have a kid or a nephew or an auntie's best friend who's sick and you need to stay home and take care of them, right? It's a general paid leave. It's a general, quote, sick leave.
Well, once again, I think the government's butts his heads into too many things. I mean,
once again, what people should butt their head into is story number one.
Well, let me just mention one thing. And before we go into that, in B block, I'm going to talk about the arch and a very interesting aspect of the building of the arch. Are you ready for that?
I can't wait.
I bet you can. Okay, now on to number one.
The number one.
Yesterday morning, 97.1 FM, the Mark Cox Morning Show, another follow-up to the Christian Kirk story, the Tesla owner who taped a man whose Tesla recorded a man placing an F Elon sticker on the Tesla, and Kirkwood twice, the same man twice, Christian Kirk confronted this gentleman, a guy named William Howells from Washington University. And at first there was quite disappointment on the conservative or libertarian side because the cops apparently said, look, there's really nothing we can do. There's just a sticker. There's no real damage. According to Christian Kirk yesterday on Mark Cox's show, Kirkwood prosecutors are going to charge Mr. Howells with harassment. Now, according to Christian Kirk, it's not going to be a big charge. It's essentially a misdemeanor. But as Christian Kirk said, maybe it will stay on this guy's quote unquote permanent record. And maybe it will deter people and show that even if you do something like this, there is a chance you will get caught. And there is a chance that you will be prosecuted.
John, can we do the flip test for a minute?
Absolutely.
Let's say Christian Kirk is upset because they did not take action against this guy. And it's funny, I've got an update on that because I listened to Mark Cox. He talked about it again this morning. But let's say Christian Kirk is upset because of the fact that no action was taken by the Kirkwood police. So let's say Christian had some stickers printed up that said F Kirkwood, and he went over to the Kirkwood City Hall and he put one on the mayor's car and the county councilman's car and the police cars. Do you think that Christian Kirk might be seeking or might be on the receiving end of some legal ramifications, John? Do you think? Do you?
Absolutely. And I think Kirkwood City government would use their resources to promote his face and his name and say,
exactly.
Can you believe this man putting curse words up in public?
Right. And on our city vehicles, the gall of this guy, you know what I'm saying?
And I think it is encouraging. I mean, I think it's a good sign. And, Christian shared on the air kind of some of the color that the Kirkwood prosecutor shared with him, which is, and Christian emphasized too, his goal has never been the whole time to ruin this guy's life or get him fired, but at least start holding people accountable. And as Mark Cox said, something that Brad Hildebrand has said, something that most people with sense say, if you're going to commit a crime on a car, why would you do it on a car that is equipped with cameras at every angle.
Exactly. It's like, and nowadays, no matter where you go, I'm a guy that I probably own, and I shouldn't say this, probably 30 security cameras at various locations, transmitter sites and stuff like that. Okay? I've gotten into the habit wherever I look, wherever I'm at, I'm looking, okay, there's a security camera, there's a security camera, there's a security camera. And nowadays, you can't go just about anywhere and not be on video someplace. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you mean. And you're a big advocate of red light cameras, Brad. You love having them all over. You love having license plate readers.
No, I'm not. Well, the license plate reader is an interesting thing too, because I know I can on a given day, I'm telling you, I see it more and more. They're called the flock cameras, and people go, "What's a flock?" It's the name of the company, FLOCK, flock cameras. I know exactly what they look like. They're somewhat, unobtrusive. They're sort of, camouflage, so to speak. There's probably not a day that doesn't go by that I don't see these all over the St. Louis area, all over the St. Charles County area, and they're put out by both municipalities, government agencies, as well as private citizens and homeowners associations. And I have a problem with that to a certain extent, because what happens is everybody knows where you're at. And me being, should I tell the police dispatcher story? Have I ever told this recently?
When we come back, let's tell it, because we're at the end of A block. Maybe tell it in B block. Right?
When I was actually in a class put on by the Illinois State Police. This was our graduation day of the Illinois State Police Academy, of learning the, I don't know if they still call it, over there in Illinois. In Missouri, it's called mules. At least it used to be. In Illinois, it was called leads. It used to be, and leads stood for Law Enforcement Agency Data System, which is the computer system in Illinois. And I took a class which was mandated by my police department. And I will tell the interesting story of the final hour of that class, taught to us by a Illinois state trooper. Okay? You ready, John? 7:23.
I'm ready.